you just gave up on us. The starting price on any of these homes would have started at 15 million.
Yeah, I don't know if we can go in the front door anymore.
It's sad. It really is sad when you think about you're not going to experience that again.
Yeah. So what separated this home from the one directly next door?
Who are you going to sell to right now when there's no community?
I do feel like you were one of the lucky ones.
There was no fire resources other than one engine.
So you think this home could have been saved?
Absolutely. My neighbors' homes could have been saved.
We are in the Pacific Palisades after the fires, and today we're going to be meeting with Reza, who built some of the last homes standing out here. And as you can see, there are very few homes that are still standing. One of them right behind me. And although it's been months after the fires, this is still what many of the lots out here look like in the Palisades. So we're going to talk to Reza about his thoughts on everything from how the fire started to what could have been prevented to what should be done in the coming months and years, at least from his point of view, having done a lot of work in this area over the years. We are here with Reza today at 3 of his builds here in the Pacific Palisades. One right behind us, as you can see, is still standing and it looks brand new. The one in the middle, a little bit torn down, one right next to it under construction still. So when did you start these projects exactly?
So we started these projects right in the heart of COVID in 2020. Okay. So when we started building these in 2020, COVID hit us, we had to slow down, and until about really the end of 2021 is when we were finally able to take off. We were building 3 houses, each one about over 10,000 square feet. And it's, you know, these are quality custom luxury homes, and anything that has happened in the last 60 days, 70 days, a lot of these homes were already like fire hardened.
Okay.
So like
you were already prepared for fire.
We just, not that prepared, but we just knew what was required and we did it. Like this house, like if you, later on, if you go through it and you see the eaves are all closed. So the eaves aren't open. Ventilation is on the side. But we did that because it's just genuinely better for the home. It wasn't necessarily for fire.
Interesting.
But it was better. The boards that we're using, everything that we're using is durable.
Okay.
We didn't use any real wood because in general, real wood in the Palisades falls apart after 6 months to a year.
So you thought about that prior, but it wasn't
Everything
necessarily
was really
for the
thought
fires.
out. Yeah, no, absolutely.
So let's walk along the sidewalk here for a bit. This home really does look like it was built yesterday. It looks almost as if it was untouched by the fires, but then you have this property right next to it that is completely torn down. So what separated this home from the one directly next door? And both of them have incredible ocean views that you probably couldn't have seen prior to this, which is
if you look through that doorway right there, I mean, that's incredible. And today is a very clear day. I mean, and that's what it was. When you walked right in through this home, you had direct ocean views and it was just an incredible view. This was another brand new home. We were just waiting for a certificate of occupancy. One of the reasons it caught on fire, it didn't burn down on the 7th. So it burned down on the next day. One of the reasons it burned down on the next day was because the entire community to our left, the community on this side, it wasn't, the embers had not been quashed yet. So they never sent fire department out on the 8th to really go through it, go through all the houses and make sure the fires were out. So this house, I had a first responder call me at 6 a.m. on the 8th of January and say, Reza, unbelievable, your 3 houses survived. Wow. And so like with tears in my eyes, I was so happy because I was here on the 7th till about 6:20.
Wow.
And that's when like the power went out, our cameras turned off, and we left the community. That's when on Swarthmore, the elementary school was on fire. We saw it all.
What were you doing here that entire afternoon? Were you trying to fight for your home's survival?
Just make sure that the homes were as safe as possible. Make sure there wasn't anything like leaning against the property, anything that could cause a fire. The thing that is crazy about it all is like, these homes were still here on the 8th. And the reason that this house caught on fire at the very end was I was with the fire department on the 8th, and we think that the embers were still flying from open gas lines in the community.
Crazy.
So if you look If we go to across the street, you'll see the gas line that comes up.
I think it's just insane how this is a majority of the homes now in the Palisades. This was their garage, and now it looks like just a pile of rubble. And across the street, truly, I do feel like you were one of the lucky ones. You have two homes that you would never really be able to tell that you were in the Palisades just facing this way. Maybe one home was completely destroyed, but I mean, I haven't really seen a home that looks like that one.
There's no rhyme or reason 100% that I could get into with you of why we survived. We think that this burned on the second day. I mean, one common thread about this house compared to these two houses is that this house did have a little bit of attic space. So attic space is a very common theme in this equation of the fire, whereas you had an enclosed place that if an ember was able to get into it, it could start combusting and create a fire.
That's how I heard. Most of the homes burned down starting with a fire in the attic, and then it spread throughout the rest of the home.
At least that's the theory.
Right. Okay.
At least that's the theory. One of the biggest, like, just distressing things about this, and I can provide you a video of it, is that when I showed up on the day at 9 a.m. on the 8th, and the roof had only been on fire. Only the roof of the garage at that time was on fire. And the first thing I did with my guys is I ran to that meter right there. That's the main line for the fire sprinklers. And I checked the meter and it said 0.
Whoa.
And that meant that my fire sprinklers couldn't turn on because that 0 means that there was no water pressure.
Wow. Okay.
So traditionally, when you have over 100 PSI of pressure for water, for your fire sprinklers to turn on to put off the water, this was at 0.
Wow.
So that couldn't happen. Then at about an hour later on Friend Street, I saw a fire engine. I flagged them down. I brought them down right in front of me. And they were like, Reza, we can't save your house. We don't have any water in the hydrants. Right. And I was just like in distress. I said, well, what can we do? And he said, well, I have 500 gallons in my truck. And I was like, wow, like, okay. He's like, okay, this is what we can do for you. We can try to wait as long as we can till we get called out. And depending on which way the fire blows, whether it's to this house or to that house, we'll put out those embers.
Okay, wow.
And that's what they did. And they're forever, it was Station 69, Engine 69, and they'll forever be my angels.
Wow.
Because they were here and they were just, it was just phenomenal. They walked to the back of this property, walked to the back of that property, monitored which way. They did what firefighters would do.
Right.
And you know, the saddest part of all was if we go inside the property.
Yeah, let's do it. Wow, this is devastating. My gosh, this looks like a large home as well. How many square feet was this property?
This was over 10,000 square feet.
And was it already completed, or what was
We were about 2 weeks away from certificate of occupancy.
Oh gosh,
right.
What timing.
I mean, you know, it's incredible. And the reason that you see, like if you look to your left and you see that wall is still standing, this is what firefighting is about. It's because the firefighters turned on what little water they had and drenched that wall so that the fire wouldn't spread to the adjacent property.
So this was the angle they took on. They came to this spot.
They they had one hose in that doorway over there.
Okay.
And then they had one hose over here, because as you can see, this whole area fell to the right.
Right.
This is all composite fencing. You don't even see the fencing. It was so hot that this plastic just completely evaporated.
Oh my God.
That's how hot it was here. And we were here watching it. And you can actually see, if you look at the house, you see the ripple effect on the window. So yeah, the house, thank God, survived. But you can see how on the glass, on the window of that house.
I'm sure that home suffered a lot of smoke damage as well. Although it looks like it is fully done and untouched just about, I'm sure it still suffered a lot of trauma from this home being burned.
Really, I mean, yes, like everything has to be checked and the exhaust and everything. But, you know, one of the things I pride myself on is like we use quality windows. And so really there was no smoke damage inside the house. The ventilation, because it's open to the outside, that all needs to be detoxified. The windows that were facing the flame side, the glass needs to be replaced. And the house will need to be power washed and repainted. But thankfully, because the home was built in such a way that it was well insulated, well protected, it survived without a lot of smoke damage or fire damage within the interior of the home. So that was great. But one of the crazy things was when the fire tilted this way, how they just jumped into action and they hosed off. You could see the great beam. That whole beam was just roaring fire down there.
Yeah, that beam looks completely burned. Wow.
And one of the saddest parts of all is when we're standing here on the 8th, we saw finally the LA Fire Department Hawks picking up water and flying over to our left. And the most devastating part is, like, these guys are trying to fight this fire, and it hadn't gotten to this level yet. And they called out to the Central Command. They said to them, hey, can we get one helicopter drop? If we get one helicopter drop, we could save this house. And they were denied by Central Command.
Shoot.
And they were like, oh, but they tried again. I mean, they felt bad for me. They tried again. They said, hey, can we get one more helicopter, one helicopter drop? And they said, no, definitely not. The helicopters are going to Chautauqua. And it was just like, it was almost as if, you know what, it was almost as if they gave up on this community the next day. They said, you know what, we're going to go fight the fire on the lines to the east, but we're not going to worry about what happened in the rest of the Palisades. When I came here that day, you know what's the saddest part of all? The Methodist Church was still standing.
Whoa.
It was alive. It was fine. The Chase building was fine. It was not on fire.
So you think something could have been done to prevent
Absolutely.
those buildings?
Oh, absolutely.
And the fires
not
weren't
only
even really...
put mine aside, but the church and the Chase building, they weren't on fire at 9 a.m. on the 8th. And I don't think enough people realize this. And no one's taken accountability for the fact that you just gave up on us.
Right.
You just gave up. There was that building, there was no fire resources other than one engine trying to minimize the fire.
Right.
At
Who
the
do you
church.
think specifically gave up on the community? Because obviously the firefighters were overwhelmed with the amount of work they had to do, and then the water situation where they were unable to fulfill the water needs for most of the homes. So who was in charge, and who do you think gave up on these specific areas?
You know, no one should be demonized in all of this, but it does come at the end of the day to leadership. So it's about leadership. It's about having a plan and well orchestrating it. And I'm sorry, like, from the mayor to the captain of the chief of the fire department, you should have had your shit together. You should have been better organized. You should have known what to do. I've been here, I've been in the Palisades for over 15 years, and one of the things I can tell you, I've seen so many fires. It's happened. But in every case, the fire department was ready. I remember, like, I've built on Amalfi in the Riviera area, and you would see, when there was a fire in the Highlands, you would see a fire marshal positioned on the top of like Casale, where there's the old Joseph fire road. And you would see a marshal up there with binoculars monitoring the fire. I went there at 4:30 on the day of the fire. No one was there. The whole ridge along Sullivan Canyon was on fire, and there was no one watching it. And it just makes you really wonder, like, where was everybody? What were they doing? Where were the resources that we know existed in LA, but they weren't there? Like,
so do you think that was just coincidence that they weren't there at the time, or what is your personal belief?
100% poor planning.
Okay.
100% poor planning. But people, from the mayor to the chief, it's not, you can't just fire the chief. You have to take responsibility. You have to say, hey, we messed up. And I know they don't want to admit that, but that's what they did. You know,
I think people would respect them a lot more as well if they took full accountability and just said, this is where I messed up. This is what we probably need to do to move forward through these situations and prevent it from happening again.
100%. The mayor should say, hey, you know what? Yeah, we didn't pre-deploy. Say it. People will respect you more for saying it. They may want your head on a stick,
right? But
they'll respect you a hell of a lot more than you just saying, hey, you know, there's no, the water's clean now.
Right.
That's not going to help anybody when their house burned down. Yeah, there are people that survived that still have their house in the Palisades, and that's wonderful, but it comes down to understanding the raw emotion of our community. Like, I grew up in the Palisades. I went to Pali High. Like, people here really love this community. And one of the things that I think our general elected leaders, from the county supervisor to the mayor's office, to our elected officials in the state assembly don't really recognize is that this is a humongous tragedy and you're not doing enough to help these people. A lot of these people don't have that generational wealth to rebuild. And they're leaving a lot of them in a lurch right now. And it's really unfortunate.
That's what a lot of people I don't think understand that are just seeing this from an outside perspective that have maybe never been to LA or the Palisades. I mean, first of all, that's so tragic that this happened to your hometown where you grew up, you went to school. That is devastating. And I'm so sorry to hear that. I mean, for me, growing up in the Valley, this was also one of the dream places to live for anyone. You know, it was just so not LA. It was very different, very unique to get into this space. What are your favorite parts of the Palisades? Growing up here, I'm sure you have tons of memories, but what are your specific, unique favorite parts being a local here and builder in this area?
I think part of it is one of the one of my favorite parts is like Tower 15, which was the lifeguard tower just to the left of us here. Just hanging out on the beach there. I mean, going to Pali High, being able to go to the ocean, just relax and chill out. I mean, that was a wonderful. And then just everything in the village, just a sense of community. Like everyone just, you know, there's something to be said. And I support our community in this. We have to make sure we find a way for the different generations to stay in this community. I don't want this to turn into one of those track house communities where everyone's median age is predominantly the same, where everyone's between, let's say, 35 and 45 or 40 to 50, because there's value in a child seeing an older person in the supermarket. You know, you want to see the different ages. You want to see that. Like that's because these people are the salt of the earth. I'm talking to one of my neighbors 2 houses down, and I'm hoping that we find a way for them, they're in their 80s, to return, and they want to return. And if we can find some sort of decent modular house so that they don't have to build a house that within 6 months they can be back, they want to be back. They love this community. And, you know, part of the joy of building in this community is actually seeing them walking through the community, talking with them, knowing them, sharing what's going on, talking about the latest and the greatest. And I tremendously miss that. I miss being in the community, seeing that, talking to those people, whether I know there are families that are not returning, and it breaks my heart because they would be here walking their dog. You know, when their kids would be back from college, they're walking the dog with their kids, and you'd be like, hey, how are you? How's college? And it's sad. It really is sad when you think about you're not going to experience that again.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, people have been here for decades and decades. They didn't buy, a majority of the people that live in the Palisades are natives and locals that have been here for decades and decades. It's not like this is the land of the rich that a lot of people think it is. So the stories like that are beautiful to hear and see that this really is just like any suburban town anywhere, truly. But yeah, why don't we go over to that home and take a look? You said we could check it out a bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for the people at home, how much were these homes priced at? What is the range when it comes to price point in these 3 homes here?
So each home is over 10,000 square feet, and they range for about starting at like $1,500 a square foot. So the starting price on any of these homes would have started at $15 million, depending on their features, how customized we would make this house, and of course taking into consideration the ocean views.
Gotcha. How many homes have you been a part of on this street alone?
On this street alone, 8 homes.
Okay, and a couple of them I've showcased on my channel.
You have, yeah. And one of them did survive on DePaul.
Oh, really? We'll have to go check that out in a second.
The modern one survived.
Wow, that's awesome.
No, the homeowners elect. She's so happy because she was an art collector and she's an artist herself.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah.
I mean, just with the 3 leveled tiers on some of those homes where you have the indoor pool, like so unique for real estate in LA on this street alone. But all right, so we're walking in here. What immediate damage can you tell from being a professional and an expert in this space? Because when I'm walking in here, I feel like if you're just anyone walking in this home, you wouldn't know that there was any smoke damage or anything that really was destroyed by some sort of fire nearby.
Right. So in general, like a home in this condition, all the exhausts, everything, the ventilation and everything, although it has a plate cover on it, it's not 100% sealed. so the smoke could get in. The house was still exposed, like air could still get in. And we know that from the day of the fire, as we watched the fire burn behind us, we know that when I was here with the fire department, this glass was bowing. Now it's flat,
okay.
but it had gotten so hot, like it could burn your fingertips.
Whoa.
This aluminum.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but now it's not glowing anymore.
Now
because
it's ice cold.
Yeah, it's ice cold because we're near the ocean. But we have professionals that check these out, and we'll replace the glass because we can't take that risk of anything potentially happening in the future.
Right.
So that's really important to us. But like for example, like these are some of the most skinniest frame reveal windows that you can get on a house right now in this market.
These views are unbelievable. This specific home probably has one of the better views because you're looking right through the trail into the ocean.
You do, yeah.
Really cool. This is a 10,000 square foot home. Now with everything that we've heard when it comes to the cleanup of the Palisades, the debris cleanup, the lot flattening, there's just so much now that has to be involved before getting back to work on this property. Then what's the delayed timeline now for this, and what's the estimated timeline look like? Obviously, you're not going to have an accurate...
For anybody who's building to sell, and that was the case here, when we're building to sell, who are you going to sell to right now when there's no community? So until the supermarkets, until the elementary school, until the private schools can reopen, you don't really have a market to sell a home like this at full value.
Exactly. You're not going to want to just sell it to an investor as well. You really want to sell them to a family to where that community was here, and that's what they would want to be looking for.
Right. And so in a case like this, it requires holding time. So really we project that the community isn't going to be back until I'd say about 2030. So in the next 5 years. So something like this, it would warrant really getting it ready to be finished by 2029.
Okay.
So that means for the next 4 years, we have to find a way to maintain it, keep it up to par, so that once it does go back into being fully completed, it's ready for the market that's going to exist in 5 years.
And what does that market look like to you? Do you think it may be able to get back to that community aspect? What does it look like to you as of now?
I'm optimistic.
Okay.
I'm optimistic. In my heart of hearts, when I've talked to the community members, I participate on community council, I participate in town halls, the salt of the earth members of the community, they want back. They want to try to find a way to get back, whether it's through building something a little bit smaller or doing a modular home, they want to come back. The emotional toll on many is going to be too much. Like if you've ever studied like the Paradise Fire or the Santa Rosa Fire, there is a percentage of the community, it's not because that they can't build, but the emotional scarring of losing everything for your family is going to be too much for them to return to the community. And that's a big issue. That's a big issue. So for a lot of those people, I know one family on DePaul, they're not going to return because it's just too much for them. But for a lot of people who just are doubling down and love the community, they want to come back. Some want to be the first on their block to be back. Some are a little bit more patient. They'll be like, okay, we'll be second or third.
Okay.
So I think in general, I'm optimistic. I think by 2030, I'd say about 50 to 70% of the community in one way or the other is going to be back.
That's a great percentage. That's a very optimistic percentage. That gives me a lot of hope that this can come back to the way it was. That's awesome.
Well, it's like, if you build it, they will come, right?
Right.
Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
So you really just have to you have to really believe in it. And it'll happen. I mean, look at this park. Look at the park behind us.
I remember when this was just dirt as well, this park here.
Look how green it is. I mean, if Mother Nature, look how green, I mean, like it is super green though. I mean, look, if Mother Nature so quickly can come back, we can also come back.
This is beautiful. So the fire didn't come down to any of this?
No, this was all burned. This whole area above the path was burned.
Whoa.
Yes.
Okay. So
those hedges that you see over there, they existed over here. They're little sprouts right now. They're starting to come back.
Okay, so you can tell that it hit this hillside, and then you've got this home that's just was nothing. Was this also being constructed on, or what was here before?
There's someone who's going to be building their home
They were going
here.
to be, but this was a dirt lot prior to the fires?
It was a dirt lot,
Got it. I mean, this home is going to be one of the better homes on this entire street. You can already see the pool down beneath and a clear shot of the ocean.
Those were all those were black. It was all completely burned, and it's all completely grown back in the last 2 weeks.
That's quick.
Yeah, since the rains.
Oh my God.
Because see how the fence has fallen in the back of the property? Our fence, the glass fence in the middle property.
Okay.
So that glass fence, it got so hot that the bolts that were holding it into the ground melted. Whoa. And the fence fell forward.
That's why it's fallen over,
yeah,
okay.
The glass fence.
So the rains did help this entire space come back to life, but also
100%.
a lot of people were worried about the rains because of the potential mudslides. How has that affected this area, if at all?
This area south of Sunset is a little bit more protected from mudslides. It's more north of Sunset with the hillside. I mean, Will Rogers had been completely covered. The area below Will Rogers had been completely covered with mud.
Whoa.
At least 2 feet of dirt, 2 feet of mud. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they just recently, about within the last week, finished cleaning it all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good. That's good to know that they're at least cleaning a little bit of it.
Well, I think Councilwoman Tracy Park is doing a phenomenal job being attentive, being on it, and really caring about the community.
So what is this going to be? Is this just going to be open? And there's the staircase?
Yeah, it's a floating staircase. So yeah, we were in the middle of building the staircase to come up here.
Wow.
And it's a floating staircase, and you know, we've had to halt construction until it makes sense for them to return.
And when do you think that would be, just to get back to construction?
I think really about 6 months.
Okay. That's not a bad timeline.
For some things, but since we have to drag it out till maybe really going until about 2 years until we really go back to like finishing it, to doing drywall and everything else.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay. All right, Reza. Well, this is one of them that I toured on my channel. This is one of your builds.
Yeah, it is, unfortunately. I mean, a lot of 2.5 years of effort and time and blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, just right off the bat, I mean, the fact that if you look over here, again, with the composite boarding, just completely gone.
Wow.
Like, here's one piece left, but just completely gone, just melted. And you can see on the floor, I mean, like, the veracity of this fire is just unbelievable what it did. And then to show you, I mean, in general, the strength of the homes that we build and the power of the beams and everything holding it together, but yet the fire just ate away anything that was combustible. You know, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. This was one of the best movie theaters I'd ever done right below us. This was the garage, but right below us was one of the best movie theaters we'd ever done. And it's gone.
I remember that movie theater. It was like, there were 3 tiers to it. It was pretty, it was one of the most unique movie theaters I've ever experienced. And then that whole basement level was a bright pink color. It was unique.
Yeah, like a cream color.
Cream color, and then, and then the floors had that mosaic pattern. There was a lot of uniqueness to it. You could see into the pool.
I mean, if we go from this angle, you can just see, especially with the structural steel, we don't want side won't, but this side.
Yeah, I don't know if we can go in the front door anymore.
No, but if you come right here, if you look through this old window, right here, it's a window that gives you, I mean, as a point of reference, those steps, that was a floating staircase in this house. And on each step, there was about a 4-inch stone. The stone is gone. Like solid pieces of stone are just gone.
Oh my gosh.
On top
just
of the stuff.
Completely disintegrated?
I mean, or just turned into rubble.
Whoa.
And you can see the structural steel. I mean, for the most part, it stayed in place. You see the thinner ones did bow a little bit. But for the most part, the structural steel stayed in place.
Yeah, this is more structure that has stayed in place than a lot of the homes here on this street.
I mean, you can even see down in there that those were the windows that went into the wine cellar. And because they had aluminum framing, the aluminum survived, but of course the glass melted. Like, it's just,
Devastating.
It just goes to show, really, I mean, we talked about it earlier, but every house is built, every single family house is built what's called 1 hour rated. So that means it gives the fire department 1 hour to get to your home to put out the fire. A lot of what people are trying to do, oh, let's build with brick, let's build with big stone and everything, it doesn't make your house more fireproof. It makes your house more fire resistant. And fire resistance buys you another hour, maybe another 2 hours. Without adequate resources for our fire department, it doesn't matter how you build your house. And that's really the message I think a lot of my neighbors should realize, is that there's no such thing as fireproof. If we don't have adequate resources for our fire department, our homes are never going to be safe. Because you could make it 4 hour rated, but if the fire department never shows up, your house is still going to burn down.
What were some more of those resources that could have been improved and given to these firefighters? Was a majority of what you were talking about, the maybe 117 gallons that were not there at the time, or what were some of those resources that could have been
Well, the
implemented?
reservoirs definitely played a part in it, right? 2 reservoirs, one on the top of the Highlands, one on the top of Chautauqua. 2 reservoirs were empty. You know, it breaks my heart. I'm across the street from a fire hydrant. And when the fire department showed up on the 8th for my other project, they went to this hydrant and it was just dripping water. So if you don't have a system that works, and the city can't say, well, it was just a temporary issue, because we've known when we build a house in this area, we know when we apply for our permit, it says you are in a severe hazard fire zone. We're put on notice. So legally speaking, if we're told that we're in a severe hazard fire zone, then the city who's telling us this obviously has notice that we're in this community. So you should also take extra preventative measures to make sure that the hydrants have water in them, the reservoirs have water in them, and that fire engines are deployed and ready to go. You know, that's the sad part, is that the Palisades, for the span that it is, it only has 2 fire stations, Fire Station 23, Fire Station 69, and each one only has 1 engine that carries water. Engine 23, engine 69, and they only have 500 gallons of water on each one.
Wow.
On the days after the fire, the only place where they could get water was at the bottom of bottom of PCH and Sunset. That was the only place that had water.
Wow.
So they had to go there, connect their engine to a fire hydrant, fill it up with water, and then come back into the Palisades.
And that was during the fires when everyone was also trying to escape, and that's why we saw some of those cars get bulldozed out of the way.
They claim that a lot of firefighters are saying unofficially or off the record that they ran out of water after 3 p.m.
Whoa.
So can you imagine, after 3 p.m., 4 p.m., there was no more water.
Wow.
This house existed at 6:20 p.m. on the 7th of January. This how my neighbor's houses existed. So between 6:20 and the next morning when I came back into this community, it burned down.
Wow.
And it's a huge
So you think
travesty
this
for us.
home could have been saved?
Absolutely. My neighbors' homes could have been saved if you had the resources in place to protect them. You can't, not all of them maybe, but a lot of them, if they were built properly, we had fire sprinklers, that would have helped. But when there's no water pressure, they're not going to turn on. They're just going to drip the water out, if even, because it's it's a sprinkler head that pops down due to the pressure when it detects fire. But it's not going to pop down and push out water when there is no water.
Right. That's devastating. So I do know that I've heard the plan was to clean up the debris within a few months' time, which is what I've heard from some of the leaders talk about. And it seems like a lot of the Palisades haven't even been started cleaning up. But actually this street, I was impressed. It did seem like there was cleanup being done on this street specifically compared to a lot of the other properties around the Palisades. But what is the plan when it comes to just the cleanup? Because it seems impossible when you just look at how much there is to do here. That seems like a headache in itself.
Well, there's different reasons for it. On this street, people were a lot more proactive, so they filled in their right of entries faster, or they immediately knew, hey, I have a basement. It's going to be more complicated for the Army Corps of Engineers to clean, so let me go private. And so that's what they did. Then you have this group in between that, because of their insurance situation, they can't go private, and they have to rely on Army Corps, so that's why they're waiting. So Army Corps doesn't really have a great plan with dealing like a situation like this. So if I did submit this, if I was the owner and I submitted this to Army Corps to clean up, they don't have a solution for this yet. And that's unfortunate, because they're the Army Corps. They should have a solution for this. They should be able to tell us and say, hey, like, I'm going to be able to drop a Bobcat into your basement or drop an excavator in here. There are smart, intelligent people. I feel like sometimes the government doesn't reach out to people like us who are boots on the ground and talk to us, and we can help them, guide them through the process, and we'd be more than willing to do that for our community. I was in a community meeting last night, and the topic was homelessness. I know not related to fires, but it came out to homelessness housing, and it was very interesting to me that in the whole conversation about homelessness housing, not once did they say, oh, we've reached out to construction specialists or people that do construction and talk about ways of lowering the cost for construction. Same thing applies here. The Army Corps are a bunch of engineers, and they're very intelligent and they know what they're doing, yet they're not really talking to the boots on the ground necessarily about how to more exponentially clean the Palisades. And that's just, I think that's the unfortunate side of big government.
Yeah, it's word versus action. Who are they even talking to?
They're talking to the big national conglomerates that do cleanup. So you might see a company doing cleanup that also did Paradise or Hawaii. Can you imagine the company that did Hawaii is now here doing cleanup in the Palisades? How did that equipment get here? Logistically, it's not reasonable.
Right.
You know, a lot of big part of it too is like, well, the government requires a certain wage to be paid. It always surprises me that in the time of an emergency, a natural disaster, you're so more worried about the people working in the disaster than you are the people who suffered from the disaster.
Wow.
You know, that it's you have to find that balance. I'm not saying that people don't deserve to get paid for the work. We pay our people well too. But you also have to take into consideration people need to get their lives back. And so if you're going to mobilize with that, like, that veracity to get the job done.
What are we looking at here?
I mean, we built both of these, and man, both owners were extremely happy in their homes, and he was on vacation when he found out his house burned down. I mean, I just can't. I had no words for him. Like, it was just so hard. One of the reasons I'm theorizing that this may, again, we still use the home hardening principles in this house, but one of the reasons that we think that maybe this house was more susceptible was because it had a lot of balconies that had French doors.
Easier to catch the embers?
Well, also easier to blow open. So when you have the French doors, French doors are latched. They have like a double latch that goes up and down within the door, but if the wind's velocity is strong enough, it will pop open. And once it pops open, then anything that flows into the property could start a fire.
Right.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, so what separated the home next door from this one? Because,
well, in general, there's nothing here that could blow open. So if the fire comes at this house, there's nothing in the front. The fire was blowing this way.
makes sense. It seems really enclosed and dense, and yeah, it'd be rare
your
for something
garage
to get
door
into.
is mirrored aluminum paneling, so that's not going to immediately, it's not as combustible. Your front door is aluminum, it's not wood. There's nothing on the exterior of this home that is immediately combustible. And of course your cacti are, you know, drought tolerant plants. So there's nothing immediately adjacent to the home that could catch it on fire. And this material that's on the exterior is extra strong. It's about 2-hour rated. It's actually a slab. It's called Decton. So it's actually when they're demoing this product, this is what kitchen product actually in a thicker form. When they showcase this, they actually put a steak on here and cook it with the flamethrower.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So this is a really fire hardy material that's, I believe, 2-hour rated. So the stucco is 1-hour rated, and this is potentially 2-hour rated.
So what was the home next door built with?
It was built with the same siding we saw earlier, and it would have been 1-hour rated.
Got it.
So this house did fall towards this house.
Okay.
And the stucco did crack. The wall did get scratched.
Yeah, you can see damage here in the
right,
pipes,
and you can see damage
even on the
here,
railing.
too. And then a sconce went missing. And the window down below, thankfully, only got scratched. It didn't get broken.
These hedges are still up in this property, but next door.
Well, here's a great example of when you talk about home hardening. The space, if you could back up actually, the distance between the house and the hedges is so huge. This is a big game changer. So if this does catch on fire, the distance from your home is so important. And this is what home hardening is about. You know, we voluntarily made this space bigger when we were building it so that there would be more light coming into the home. And it just provided a more open space. But it also does, again, an unintentional functional design created a home hardening strategy of branches and trees not touching the home if they did catch on fire.
Wow. Yeah, because most of the side yards are a lot more narrow than this one.
Typical side yards in the Palisades are about 5 feet. And if you put 2 feet hedge, that means across 3 feet, you're going to get branches touching your house.
Right. And that's what affected some of the homes that burned down.
Potentially, yes, because you'll have under your awning, you'll have branches that are burning, and that could lead to it catching on fire.
Okay, so I recognize this backyard.
Yeah.
I remember this. When I toured it a few years ago, this was just being redone. There was no greenery on this pathway right here in this trail, and it looks gorgeous even still, which is awesome. But then this backyard, the tree here, shoot.
Again, these are trees that are good to have if there's a fire. So an oak and a pepper. Oh. These are good trees as opposed to like a eucalyptus.
Oh, okay.
That would burn more rapidly.
And why is that?
They're just more fire-hardened trees. They've been in California longer, from what I understand.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so the oak and the pepper.
Interesting. And then shoot, you can see the home next door from right here. Oh my goodness. And so you said it was because that one had more balconies than the one next door, correct?
Well, the wind was blowing this way.
Got it.
So that front of that house potentially, because it had what are French doors. So the French doors could blow open. It's a theory.
Got it.
It's theory because I compare it to this house that only has sliders, and sliders can't get blown open.
I'm just at a loss for words right now. I haven't seen this view in quite some time. It is gorgeous, but you can just see now the view of the hills is, a lot of the trees are burned. The Santa Monica Mountains are burned.
Yeah, it's naked. It's a completely naked hillside. We used to, when we were building and we would look out in that direction, it felt like something out of the Mediterranean Riviera.
Right.
Like it looked so lush, and the houses were perched on different chops, and it looked so great. And now it's just barren. You see a few roofs, but in between every house there was a fire.
I just hope that they don't build back the homes like you were saying, as if they all look the same, gentrify it, build more apartments. What made the Palisades great was that every home had their own character. They were all very unique. It felt like something out of a movie. So I hope they can get back to that. It's the Palisades charm. You got to keep the Palisades charm. You know, if you're rich, you live in Beverly Hills. If you're lucky, you live in the Palisades.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard that one growing up here.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, any other experiences you'd want to share or touch on before we wrap this up?
No, just really, I think part of it is having faith and staying positive and moving forward in a good way. And just really, I think one of the amazing things that's come out of this is is I've noticed on a lot of chats, a lot of neighbors have come together because of it. And they're doing meetups and sharing, you know, having that familiarity to keep an attachment to their community because their homes have burned down.
I think if any community can come back, it would be the Palisades, because that's what it was, the sense of community, which is awesome. Really appreciate you sharing your story, you having been here, your homes, the builds. I'm sure it's very emotional for you coming here probably every time.
It has been. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again to Reza for showing us his builds, his neighborhood, and just what the Palisades currently looks like and what the potential of how the future of the Palisades may be able to look. Just try to imagine this being a property that you built from the ground up or was even living in, and now it looks like this. Truly still at a loss for words. But I do hope one day this community will be able to come back and rebuild. But I appreciate you guys for watching, listening to his story, and we'll see you next time.